So I started practicing yoga when I was 8 because I apparently was very stressed and I didn't understand fractions. There's nothing passive about passive income. It's just that you do all the work at the front and the money comes in afterwards.
Be true, be authentic, provide value, and you don't have to follow that same strategy that everybody else is.
Get the training, follow the coaching, and take some goddamn action.
That was so valuable. I don't even know how you're going to top that with the next question.
Hey creators, it's your hosts, Natalie and Yasmin, and you're listening to the Course Creation Podcast. We'll talk business, building digital empires, and how to create passive income to start living a life you love. We are here to empower those of you who are thinking of starting your own course and to support those who are already well on their way to success. We've built a 7-figure media agency on unique storytelling, and now we're here to share our story in the course creation world, and more importantly, to hear yours. We are committed to creating a space for learning and a space for diversity and inclusion. Now let's get the show started. 3, 2, 1, action. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Yasmin from CourseCreation.com, and I'm joined by my partner in crime, Natalie. We have another amazing guest on the show today, joining us all the way from Australia. We've got Amy McDonald. She is a yoga student, teacher, and a business coach. She supports talented yoga teachers grow abundant yoga businesses with one-on-one coaching, online training programs, workshops, and retreats. Amy is also the host of the podcast called Abundant Yoga Teachers. You can find her show on Apple Podcasts, where she focuses on 45 minutes of yoga business training every week. Amy, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel very special.
It's so lovely having you, and Yasmin always gives us amazing bomb intros to all of our guests, but we really want to hear from you and your journey and, you know, how you came to entrepreneurship. Tell us, take us all the way back to growing up and some of the experiences that you had that led you to this moment now.
You know, it's funny, because I'm 42 and I think I started my very first business. It would have been in my early 20s. But I suspect in hindsight, my dad was always an entrepreneur. I just never kind of realized it. And I think in the 80s, you didn't use that term. I think that's sort of a new fashionable term. But he had his own business. He tried things. He, some things worked, some things didn't. But he always had visions, and he's always sort of created elaborate projects. So I suspect I kind of have some kind of genetic predisposition for entrepreneurship. But essentially, I did the classic thing, worked too hard probably at high school, went to university, did the qualification I should have done that my parents approved of, finished that and thought, oh, well, that doesn't really excite me so much. So I worked in the jobs that I could get, mostly in sustainability and environment policy, that sort of stuff. And then I just decided to start experimenting with things that I enjoyed. So I went back to study writing and editing. I did a yoga teacher qualification. I retrained as a coach. And I went to, probably when I was in my later 20s, I dropped down to part-time in my real job and experimented with all sorts of other side hustles. And it wasn't until about 6 years ago that I decided to get rid of all of the real jobs and just do the side hustle, which is the business that I have now, that I absolutely love. And honestly, I have so much fun. I just, every time I have a call or a session with a client, I just feel so blessed.
That's amazing, Amy. Did you start, did you have like a yoga studio? Is that where you started? Like when you transitioned? Take us back to what the transition looked like and how your business was set up in the early days.
So in the early days, so I started practicing yoga when I was 8 because I apparently was very stressed and I didn't understand fractions, and the doctor thought I was going to give myself an ulcer. And so I came from a really, really vanilla, middle class, Australian family, nothing fancy, lower middle class, never had any of the brands. I was always desperate to have the cool things and we could never afford it. We certainly didn't have anything new age or alternative in my household. It was sausages and mashed potato and peas from the freezer. It was just, nothing like that. But my best friend from kindergarten, her mother was a bit new age. That she went to, my best friend had been to a Montessori kindergarten, and she did this thing called yoga. And so my mother decided that, well, maybe Amy should try that instead of going on this ulcer medication at 8 years old. So that was where my yoga journey started, completely fortuitous. But my business started, I didn't start in the yoga space. I started with essentially project management. So I was working for a not-for-profit, and that contract came to an end and they still wanted to use me for things. And so they said, well, look, if you do this as a freelancer, we'll just pay you the lump sum. And so that kind of launched me with that one corporate contract. And then I just diversified my skills over time. So I guess for folks that are listening, I didn't have a clear path of, I want to become a yoga business coach. It was just over time an evolution of my passions and skills that ended up in this strange collection that's called being a yoga business coach.
I love that.
But to answer your question about a studio, the only studio that I ever owned, I went to classic eat, pray, love sort of moment, relationship, implosion, all of that. India, yoga teacher training, broke. My nana's walking friend's daughter had a house in Melbourne that she let me house sit for $100 a week, which I then got a housemate to pay the $100 because I had nothing. And then I cleared all the furniture out of the lounge room, called it a yoga studio, and started teaching there. So that's how that got started.
What a story.
It's awesome. I can just hear you talking. I want to go, I feel like it's a movie. I'm picturing everything in my head. You just took us through the whole journey and it's awesome.
I'm sure you've got a lot of listeners who maybe they're in that broke stage, or maybe they're coming out of it. It's awesome in hindsight. It sucks when you're in it.
100%. We've all been there. Listen, we have a lot of stories too, and we've sort of hit our rock bottom, but it's those are the stories that are powerful and empowering, because look at where we are now, and they're just awesome experiences to look back to and say we've worked so hard to get here. So that's incredible. So talk to us about when you started. So you've been coaching for some time in your business, and you have that background and foundation as well that you brought into the yoga business from the early days. Yeah. So for basically our listeners right now who are online course creators, digital business owners, everything is essentially, how do you set up your foundation online? Where do you begin? What do you need? Now, you started over a decade ago, but how have some of the tools changed over time, or some of the strategies that you've been using changed over time?
Where shall I start? Well, I think probably one of the things that served me best throughout the development of my business is holding true to my values and my integrity, and trusting that authenticity is sort of my most successful selling point, if you will. And that's what I recommend to all of my clients. I think when I first started, particularly in the coaching space, I thought I needed to be like all of the other coaches. I had God help me, like the glamour shots with I'm not a makeup user, but have all this makeup done. I couldn't kind of figure that out. With the faux kind of French imitation furniture and the gold coffee table with my photograph on the phone, and all that, all the things that all of the other women coaches have, so that we all look exactly the same. And it took me a few years to have the courage to just think, well, hang on a second, that's fake. No wonder it feels uncomfortable. No wonder I feel like I'm never living up to what I'm committing to deliver. That's not what I look like. And I remember being at a workshop in Brisbane here in Australia, and with my yoga teacher, and his teaching style is pretty full on. And so it was 3 hours of intense yoga, at the end of which, it was a hot day, at the end of which I'm just a hot mess. And throughout the whole class, I'd been in the same position in the studio, and there was a woman to my right. And when we were getting up to go take the lunch break, she said, "Oh, you're Amy. I'm on your mailing list." And I'm there in like just disgusting, dripping, completely worn out. And I thought in that moment, right, that's it. I'm not going to try and pretend to be somebody else anymore, because when I meet my people, I want to be able to connect with them and be myself. So I think, the thing that has served me well more over the past sort of 5-6 years, as I've given myself permission, is to be just me and trust that in the digital space, you don't have to please everybody, because you have access to the global market. So there are going to be inevitably enough people who resonate with your message and your aesthetic and your vision and your techniques without having to try and be like everybody else. I think that's the biggest thing that served me over time. As far as the technology and the tools, I mean, it all just changes all the time. Where I see entrepreneurs waste money and time is bright, shiny object syndrome, trying all of the things and trying to do all of the things. I think pick some things, do them well, be consistent. But first and foremost, I think being yourself is key. That's the thing that makes you stand out.
Absolutely. I can completely relate to everything you're saying, because as Yasmin and I are building our, online digital business, there's so much pressure, and there's so much pressure to be what we think a mentor or a coach is supposed to be like. And it's like, I think it's just because you keep comparing yourself to the competition. And what we don't realize is like the internet is like meant to show you your competition and your competition only. So it's like, it's like when you go out there, you're like, everybody's doing this. Everybody and their mother is doing this, and I should stop doing this. So mind shifts are such a huge part of this business. And it's just being authentic and true to yourself. I love that you're giving that advice to people, because staying in that space is incredibly difficult, but staying in that space is so important. And can you share with us some of, outside of, just being authentic and being yourself and being who you are, what other mind shifts did you have to overcome in your journey as you were building your business?
Great question. The one that comes up first is just the worthiness for wealth, particularly in any industry where people really feel driven by their own personal passion. So it's rife in yoga, but I see it in all sorts of healing modalities, holistic practitioners, or anybody who's very passionate about what they do, arts. People feel like they shouldn't receive prosperity for that. Oh, it's my passion. I'm just lucky enough to do what I love. I'm not worthy of wealth. And I think that changing my money story was definitely something that I received a lot of coaching on and did a lot of work on that to reconcile that for myself, that no, you can work not a whole lot. You don't have to slave to make your money. You can work the hours that you want to. You can say no to people you don't want to work with. You can charge a rate that feels good to you, regardless what someone else tells you, and you can make a truckload of cash, and it doesn't make you a bad person. Like, there was quite a bit of inner work that I had to do on that for myself. I used to really believe that it was more spiritual to be broke. Like, I really struggled with it. I would do all sorts of absurd things, and it was a process to get out of it. I often share the story that, I thought I'd healed this thing about, no, I deserve prosperity, and I was going to a conference in LA, so I was going to fly business class, and when you fly business class with Qantas, they give you pajamas, and I was like, yeah, I've made it. And so I get to LAX, and I think I had to get to like Marina Del Rey or something. So I caught the bus. Like, I got the bus from LAX, the public bus, and it wasn't until I got to the conference that my coach said, I think you part the way there with your money story, but you, like, next time, Uber. Okay. get a cab. So, that all took a while. And the same with my programs, I think also just handling large sums of money and not being frightened about that. Investing in things like, launching a new course and not just trying to enroll people through hope, but actually budgeting for investing in ads, investing in marketing, knowing that that's part of having spending money is a part of having a real business, and being comfortable with making intelligent choices about giving and receiving wealth. I think that's been a big mindset shift for me.
I have a follow-up question to that. Sorry to jump in really quick before Yasmin went. So, did you find that you had to have the mind shift first, or did you start feeling, success in your journey of business, and that allowed you to believe in the mind shift of the money opportunity? I'm asking that selfishly, I'll be honest with you. And the reason for that is because, as we've sort of mentioned off camera or off the mic, that, we have finished making our course. I have envisioned us launching this course many times over. And my visions of it being incredibly successful in comparison to it not being successful are minor. And that's just the mind shift that I'm having in my head. And I'm just, I do believe in this idea that, we need to be who we want to be first before we achieve anything, and it's like, but everybody thinks if you do it, then you will have it, and then you can be who you want to be.
It's a tricky question, and probably, let's face it, no matter how I answer it, I'm going to offend a portion of your audience. I think this is a polarizing thing. One of the things I did when I had my business was emerging, I used to teach for a not-for-profit here. It was about women's financial literacy, and particularly I used to do a train the trainer for support workers who helped women coming out of domestic abuse situations who just had zero idea about money, had been financially abused by their partners. And it opened my eyes to how women can be so disempowered around money. And it's got nothing to do with how much money you have. It's like domestic violence. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Any woman can unfortunately be a victim of that. Same with financial abuse. And doing that work for those years and supporting so many women in that way, I am very cautious about financial security for women. And personally, I'm quite conservative with, cash. I think it's sexy as hell to save things and all that sort of stuff. So I guess in a way, for me, it's a little bit of I guess I'm sort of blending together both of those strategies. I know I have colleagues who did the act as if approach to wealth creation and just loaded up a credit card. And guess what? I'm flying all over the world, doing all the trainings, business class, fancy hotels, not making any money. And now I've got 20 grand of debt on my credit card. That to me has zero appeal. So I think the act as if strategy is precarious. But sort of like stair-stepping it with both is a really good idea. Okay, maybe you trust yourself when you have a plan that I am going to take the next international flight sitting at the front rather than at the back. And then when I pay that off, then I might do the next one. So, I actually think I think everybody has to reach their own point with that. But I don't think that acting as if and spending a whole bunch of money so that you look like you're successful is a smart move. Nor do I think you can just manifest your reality without doing anything. Yes, mindset. Yes, affirmations. Yes, vision board. Yes, all of that. And yes, get the training, follow the coaching, and take some goddamn action. I think you need all of it at the same time. At least that was true for me.
Well, we got our answer, so let's wrap it up. I'm just kidding. but I like how you just summed it up there. Yes, affirmations. Yes, mindset. Yes, training. But also get a coach, have a mentor. You know,
Use
like
the things.
yeah, do the things.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't just oracle card yourself into success. You need to sit at your computer and do the stuff that bores you and all of those things.
Mm-hmm. And Amy, I was listening to your podcast and you mentioned you've spent like 6 figures when it comes to training. Like, and I know it racks up really, really quickly because that self-development is so, so important. And, you know, if you are able to do it in a shorter period of time, amazing. But I'm sure this is racked up like over the years as you felt like you've needed to transition from point A to point B and just elevate yourself. Let's talk about how important mentorship has been. Investing in yourself has been, and obviously that's still continuous in your journey.
It's tricky when you say because I'm a coach. Obviously, it could be very easily perceived that I have some kind of like ulterior motive in telling everybody that they need coaching. But I know for sure that if I hadn't invested in those programs, I wouldn't be here now. Like I just, I didn't have the skills or the awareness to get myself to this point with the me that I was 6 years ago. Otherwise, I would have done it already. So for me, I did need someone who could challenge me, test my assumptions, call me on my bullshit, hold me accountable. And then for me personally, remind me that why not me? Like if all of these people can do it, why not you? Let's face it, in this industry, there are all sorts of, sorry ladies, but Australian, there's so many wankers who make heaps of money and aren't very nice, don't know very much. Like there is lots of crap in this industry. So why not people like us who actually value quality, who really want to help people and hold ourselves to quite a high standard when it comes to the content that we're creating. So I needed that from someone beyond myself. I couldn't do that from me. But I think, again, there's a difference between making informed, considered decisions about the mentorship, the training, the coaching that you're calling in for yourself, and simply being addicted to more training because which is born from some sort of sense of personal lack or inadequacy. I see that particularly in the yoga industry. Yoga teachers will just take training after training after training because they think they're still not enough. It's that hungry ghost phenomenon of no matter how much I get, I'm still empty. So it's fun. Again, I guess it's that part of entrepreneurship that people don't tell you about at the start, where in fact it's so much a personal development journey. You need to know yourself to know what's the next right step for me, not forging out by myself, nor disempowering myself by giving all of my power away.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also believing in yourself and taking the training and taking the knowledge that you're getting and actually applying it versus feeling like, okay, I need more. I think it's just this fear of maybe not taking action that holds a lot of people back. But it's about, taking whatever you have to obtain and again, applying it before you invest back in and get back into, the next training or whatever it might be.
Yes, good point. I like that.
So let's talk a little bit about your programs and what you're offering. And I really am curious. Obviously, a lot of yoga businesses are in-person businesses. Yeah. And, in these unprecedented times, it's been, I'm sure, very difficult for a lot of studios out there and yoga instructors. So they're probably thinking, how else can I produce income? How could I have an online business? How could I establish it when I've been so used to this energy that I have in the room with all of my students? And it's been such a, in-person experience. So in your business coaching and the services that you're providing online, are you providing that mind shift of your students now can have abundance outside of the studio? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it was sort of mid-March. I thought it would be a good idea to put on all of these free trainings about how to teach online which went nuts. Like I haven't had leads that affordable for, I don't know, since like 2012. Crazy 80-cent leads, bananas. Just really helping for my people. They need the tactical stuff, like what platform do I use? How do I connect this to that? How does my payment shopping cart link to my scheduling, whatchamacallit? So a whole bunch of that. And I think during the unprecedented times, for me personally, I live by myself, I live in the country, offering all of that free content has just been so nourishing for me, like just to have people to talk to, help people, feel like I'm contributing in some way. So I haven't really offered any paid programming around pivots, but I've done a whole bunch of free stuff. And in my business, service is always first and second is profit. So I know that now I have thousands of new subscribers, for example, on my email list. When the time comes to say who would like to purchase something from me, I've got a whole bunch more folks who have spent time with me, know, like, and trust me, and are going to be more likely to convert for sales. So I haven't had a course per se around pivoting, but I do think that inadvertently, because I didn't know it would be so well received, inadvertently I have gone and built a whole lot of goodwill with potential new clients. What I am seeing in my space is all of these yoga teachers now have this fantasy of, I would really like some passive income. I'd really like to do an online course. And I think where people can get mixed up with, online courses are my one-stop shop to cash. I can just stay in bed all day and Tim Ferriss it in a hammock and cha-ching all, it's just my phone's going to blow up, is just not having the reach to, it's about volume when you're talking about that sort of a program. And I think that's where people get a bit mixed up about passive income, because to my way of thinking, there's nothing passive about passive income. It's just that you do all the work at the front and the money comes in afterwards. So it's interesting to see a lot of people think that, I'm going to just suddenly make my fortune selling an online course and in my pajamas, but actually it's a little more involved than that.
Let's dive deeper into that, because I think it's not just yoga teachers who have that idea. It's a lot of our listeners and a lot of people who get into this industry think this way. And I think even Yasmin and I on some level did, because we created a whole course without even thinking about what the market looks like, just because we're like, hey, we'll just package our 10 years of wisdom into a course and boom, pivot the business. So when we talk about passive income and when we talk about online course creation, what are we really talking about? Are we, you're right, it's like doing the work up front and reaping the benefits as time goes on. Is that it? Or what else is in that equation?
Well, I think one of the boons of deciding to become entrepreneurs is that we get to intentionally create our businesses based on what's going to serve our lives, what my lifestyle is, how I want to roll, what makes me feel good. If that wasn't a priority, I'd stay in a job and have a regular income and benefits and all of that stuff. So the combination or the blend of things that you do, how much is pre-recorded, how much is evergreen, how much is live, how much is in person, if that's a thing in the future, very much will depend on what the business owner is lit up by. And I know for me, I've been through rounds of wholly evergreen, complete info product through to all delivered live, still online, but in real time. And it varies depending on what I'm doing with my life and how I want to show up. I suspect that the step that people miss is the part that comes before the marketing. I think offering anything there's 3 steps to it. And I think oftentimes people miss one step and confuse the other 2. So the first step is, let's work it backwards. The third step is actually the delivery of the course itself. And when I say the delivery of the course, I mean you're making it as you deliver it. Now, I'm a Gen X. I was raised by baby boomers. I was raised with the belief that if you don't have it all ready when you start selling it, that you're lazy, you're unprofessional, all of that stuff, you're cheating, whatever. Now what I know is that if I make my course as I deliver it, it is much more tailored to the audience. It is much more in tune with what they need. I'm getting the quantity right. I often think that first-time course makers stuff too much into a course, and if anything, the consumer feels overwhelmed, but not just overwhelmed. They feel resentful that I spent all this money and I couldn't use it all. It's like when I'm in the States and those freaking serving sizes are so massive. I'm like, I spent $20. I ate like a quarter of my meal. I feel like I've wasted my money. But if I had been served a quarter of the portion, I would have felt great about my $20 dinner. So, if we make it as we deliver it, then we get the portions right. So that's the third step. The second step is marketing the thing. Like, you got to sell it. And whatever your sales target is, 200 people, 20 people, 2 people, get clear on that and sell it to that many people. But the first step before either of those two things is the community building step that has to happen before you start selling it. The chances that, depending on the price point, maybe if it's $27, it's different. But the higher the price point, the less likely someone who doesn't know you is going to purchase your product. So simply running a social media ad for a course to someone who doesn't know you yet, it's like, can I move in on a first date? No one says yes to that. So I think that's the bit that people leave off, the development of their course. So for me, I've got a 4-month course. It's a $2,000 investment. I'm giving myself 6 weeks before I start selling it just to grow my community base so that when I do start selling it, I've got more people to talk to. Now, for me, my demographic is older, 35, but mostly 40s, early 50s is my target market. They tend to buy from email. So that's where I do most of my sales. I do some remarketing stuff on platforms or whatever, but for the most part, my email list is where my sales come from. So the 6 weeks before I even start talking about my course, I'm working to grow that email list and build know, like, and trust so that when I then say, hey, the card is open, registration's now available, there's all of these people who are already primed to be interested in what I'm having to offer. I think that's the bit that people miss out on. When they think I'm going to launch my course, they think straight away I'm going to start selling it, and they miss the bit about meeting people, networking, growing your audience. That has to happen before you start selling.
So what are the top things that somebody needs to do to grow their email list?
Well, it might not be email. I mean, I'm old. So email works for me. My people are older. That email works for them. It could be whatever you're on, like whatever platforms you're using. But my brand is built on authenticity, integrity. I hope that's my intention. So for me to grow my following, I'm looking to have meaningful connections with people. I'm looking to have conversations with people. And I have a course that I run quite often about social media, and the overall premise of that course is you want to have as many conversations with as many people as you can without any attachment whatsoever as to whether or not they buy something from you. Every conversation I have with anybody through any of my platforms is useful to me. It's nice to know that I'm helping somebody. It helps me understand where the market's at and what people need, and it's a bonus if they buy something, but if they don't, that's good too. So regardless if it's email, if it's wherever you're playing, looking to have actually meaningful connections with people, that's what I recommend. And so doing things like showing up consistently, being really generous with what you offer. I think a lot of newbies think if I give away too much, people will have everything, they won't want to buy it if they've got so much for free already. But I think that's just not accurate. I think giving a lot demonstrates good faith, that you know what you're talking about, and it encourages people to step onto the next journey with you, which is the paid version. So I think generosity, authenticity, integrity, and meaningful connection, regardless of the platforms that you're using to grow. You don't need an email list. You can just pixel everybody and retarget if you've got great. If you're doing really regular, meaningful Instagram lives, then you just retarget those people with ads. They've already spent time with you. You don't need their email to show them ads for your course, for example. So I think over time you'll discover what the best avenue is for you to meet people and make sales. But it doesn't have to be the same one it doesn't have to be email necessarily.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. I want to go back to something you said about being generous when you're building your list, when you're building your community. How much is too generous, or should you just be overly generous? And the reason I'm asking is because we constantly sort of like talk about, what we want to offer and what we want to package, let's say, in a potential course, right? Yeah. So I'm like, every now and then I get really inspired and I'm like, this is an amazing lesson, and I'm like, I write down all the lessons and I'm like, this is going to work great. But then I'm like, or is this something that I should be generous with and give away? So, and if I give it away, will I have enough content for an actual lesson later on? So is there a way to sort of, sort that out? Do you have any advice on that?
It's
a hard one.
It's funny. I was thinking about this morning, just getting ready for my day, thinking about this month. I'm doing 2 hours a week of free coaching for whoever wants to show up. All week this week, I'm doing 30 minutes a day of email marketing training for free. I've got my podcast for free, some IGTV trainings for free. And I thought, is that too much? And then I thought, well, I've had June and July have been really good to me financially. I'm good for the money part, so I've got time. Why not? So that all feels good to me, but I think there's a couple of things to consider. I think it's very important for example, for me, I have, in addition to my courses, I also have a high-level mastermind and one-to-one clients. And so I want to always be mindful that I'm never giving away for free more than what those people have signed up to receive. I really want to honor their commitment, their financial investment, and make sure that they're always going to get the most because that's what they've bought. So, I think that's important, that you don't end up giving away stuff that other people might see as, well, what am I've bought the thing. Why are you doing? There's got to be a distinction energetically in that way. I also feel like I'm pretty checked in with my community. Like the reason that I'm doing, God help me, it's not my interest. The reason that I'm doing 5 days in a row of email training is because people kept asking for it. And so I thought, well, a fairly slow week, let's do it. Let's see what happens. Because lots of people asked for it already. So I think if you're checked in with what your people are asking you for and you can provide it, but not at a level that exceeds what people are paying you to receive, then that's probably the sweet spot. And sometimes you'll get it wrong, and that's okay too.
Yeah, that was really, really beautifully put. I think there just needs to be a balance, and you just have to check in with yourself and figure out how much am I giving away, and absolutely keeping in mind that I have to step up and show up for people who are paying to give them more value. So, but I love that you said, don't hold back from giving your information away, because that's how you build a community. That's how you build the like, know, and trust factor of people wanting to listen to you and wanting to potentially take a course that you're offering. So it's important to have those things that you're offering. So I want to talk about building an email list. Now, I know there's different strategies depending on your business, and lead magnets are obviously really important. We talk about whether it's an offer, like a front door offer that is maybe paid for, or if it's a freebie, whatever that looks like. As we are establishing ourselves, and I know we can roll out different types of freebies to test it out and see what resonates with whom. But how much is too much? Like when we're first starting out to build a community and we want to have, let's say, a guide or a checklist, how many of those should we have, and how often should we change it up? I don't know if there's any advice you can give in that sense.
I've had the same video series lead magnet for, I think I made that thing in like 2015, and people still like it and it still works. I do other things, but that one that's like on my email footer, and if I've got nothing else to talk about, it's that thing. And people still, it's a pop-up somewhere. People still opt in for that thing. It still works. Where I see people, like, what drives me crazy with entrepreneurs, and this comes back a little to that bright, shiny object thing, is just constantly making and remaking and busy work that doesn't actually get you any closer to cash. Like, when you're just starting, you need to make money, like make a thing that's good enough and then sell something. Stop, I'll just make another ebook. Oh God, like, just like back the ebook you've already got or whatever it is. For me, the best strategy for email building for sure is free webinars. I am of the opinion that being polarizing is powerful in business. So I haven't been on my best behavior, but I swear a lot. I look exactly like me, like I'm going to the gym after this. That's what I'm wearing. Like, that's my jam. I use ridiculous and probably inappropriate dating analogies to illustrate points. Like, that's who I am. And I'm intentionally polarizing because I want people to know from the get-go, are they into it or not? I don't think there's any value in having a huge email list with people who kind of like, yeah, whatever, she's kind of interesting. Like, be interested or go follow somebody else. So you can't get you can't be as polarizing in an ebook or a checklist. But if you get on a webinar with me and you're like, whoa, this chick, like, she has a potty mouth and she's irreverent and she is not for me, that's good for me. Like, unsubscribe. There's other coaches for you. So I do think that I'd much prefer to have a smaller list of people who liked what I had to say than a huge list of people who I just went into their promotions folder and, well, what's the point of that? So for me, webinars are great because I can be myself and people very quickly know, this is curious, or no, thank you.
Let's talk about webinars. So I know webinars can be so powerful and an amazing strategy for building an email list and an amazing strategy for selling a product or, a course.
Yep.
I have been an audience member to many online webinars myself. And there's two things that I've noticed. One, a lot of the times I will be on it. I will listen from a certain place, and then I'll look back on the content and I'll say, did I actually get anything valuable? And it feels like it's just this very long conversation about the kind of lifestyle that I could have. And it's just like, it's true, right? It's true. Right? And it's just kind of like, I'm there for it. I want to have that lifestyle. It works for a lot of, course creators, and it works on me too. Cause after I hear it, after some time, I'm like, that person's gotta be living that lifestyle if they're talking about it so much, right? So what is the perfect equation for a webinar? Should we just get on a webinar and talk about a lifestyle for 45 minutes, or should we actually give content?
Value.
And again, how much value is too much value, and how much content is too much content? And should we actually be selling through that lifestyle image?
The fluff that you have to include.
Yeah, but it's like, it will literally go for like 30 minutes and like, imagine yourself moved out of that apartment and in that car and with the time. And it's like, okay, I get it. Can you give me something now? What's your advice on that? Or it feels like a big sales thing, and I don't know if I need a mind shift around that, perhaps.
Well, look, I think I've been on those webinars where it's like, damn, this is who this webinar is for. And they're pre-qualifying the hell out of everything, and then they're going to give you some nebulous, get on the phone with one of our, oh, come on, teach me something. But I'd like to think that we all know that, dude, that is an Airbnb and that is not your car. You're just standing next to it. Like, surely we're getting to a point where we understand that. This is probably not palatable to a whole lot of people who teach internet marketing. When I offer a webinar. If you're coming to my social media masterclass or my Facebook ads masterclass or my how to take yoga selfies thing or whatever, I'm going to teach you 60 minutes of that stuff. And then at the end of 60 minutes, I always say at the end of my webinars, I say, okay, that's all the content I have for you today. I'm going to take 10 minutes and talk about a program that I'm offering. If you don't want to hear about it, thanks so much for being here. See you later. If you'd like to know, stick around. And then people know, okay, she's changing gears. This isn't a bait and switch. Most people stay because they're curious, but nobody feels sold to because you overtly say, I'm done now. You've got this thing. If you're interested in knowing about the next thing, hang around. I think it's also important to know your own sales conversions. I don't have really high sales conversions of my webinars. I'm not like the phone's going nuts while I'm doing the sell at the end. And I'm okay with that too. I'd much prefer to have a couple of hundred people sign up to a training. I get to meet a couple of hundred people. We hang around for a while. Maybe they buy something later, maybe they don't. Not, a portion of them show up live. It takes the pressure off me. I'd prefer to do 2 rather than feel really stressed out about crushing it with 1. That just doesn't feel good to me. So I think knowing your conversion stats and being okay with whatever they are, like work your system based on your stats. Don't set unachievable goals for yourself and then feel like a failure. But then also it works best for me to be very overt with people about when I'm selling and when I'm offering content and, adding value. And respecting their time, teaching them something meaningful.
I really appreciate that. It's nice to know that you can be successful in this industry without having to follow this like step by step of the bait and switch system that is very much out there, yes. And it's like have a pop out and make sure it's in bright red, and it's all of these it works. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It just sometimes I have a hard time with just being authentic to what we're trying to do here, and what we're trying to do here is help people, right? So it's like if I have to pull the wool over your eyes to help you, then I'm not really helping you, right?
I think the takeaway is be true, be authentic, provide value, and you don't have to follow that same strategy that everybody else is just because everybody else is doing it. And I think the next step too, Amy, if you don't mind speaking to this, but of course you're taking the time to put these webinars together. Obviously, there's follow-ups that need to happen. And there still is a strategy when it comes to email marketing. I mean, you've been teaching email marketing and email strategies to your students all week right now. And again, listening to your podcast, you had some great tips in terms of how you can engage on email and keeping things concise. So being very clear about what you're trying to sell and when you're, or, what you are trying to sell and the value that you're bringing to the table. Let's not be afraid to use the word sell. But you did talk about really focusing your emails and doing a solo mail, so to speak, right? Instead of an email that, focuses on 10 different ideas. Can you talk a little bit about that? And again, this is the follow-up to your webinar.
Yep. Sure. Again, I think everybody gets to decide how many emails they feel good about sending. There's no one size fits all. I'm on some of those big name email marketing lists where they'll send me 4 emails a day which I find interesting because I'm in the industry. But I'm not the sort of person who's going to do that. Maybe at the end of a big marketing strategy, I will send 12 hours to go, 6 hours to go right now to the people who have clicked. But I'm not going to be harassing everybody. But I do, we're in business. These aren't charities that we're setting up. These aren't hobbies. There are businesses. And so I think you need to be clear with people. What I always say to my folks or yoga teachers, it's if you're in a yoga class or getting a massage or something like that, if the person that's doing the hands-on assist or doing the body work, doing the massage, if they feel it anyway awkward or tentative, it feels creepy as hell. If someone tentatively puts their hands on you, it's horrible, so creepy. And the same is true for email. If someone is tentative about, would you like to buy my thing? Or maybe it's that's when it feels yuck. But if you believe in what you've built, your course sounds amazing. If you really believe in it, I say to people, it's like when you first fall in love, you've got to be that infatuated with it that you are telling all of your girlfriends 6 times over whether they want to hear it or not, because you're obsessed. if you feel that in integrity with what you're offering, then sending another email just sounds like a courtesy note about, I've got this cool thing and I genuinely think it would be good for you. Time's running out. Do you want it? But if you're tentative or hesitant, that's when people feel sold to and creeped out. So be direct, be in love with what you're doing, and then find the right amount of, don't be standoffish. This is your business. Find the right amount of the right frequency to send out emails that feels good to you.
Amazing. That was so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how you're going to top that with the next question. Because it was so good. I was getting tingles. I'm like, be you, be upfront. Like it's so much value. Thank you so much for that. We are coming towards the end of our recording. Before I ask the last question that I ask every single one of our guests, Yasmin, did you have anything?
Well, I just want to know,
I feel like Yasmin has
in terms of, I just want to our listeners who may be in the yoga space, would love to just learn about some of your service offerings, what they can look forward to in Amy's world.
Never send me an email, because I like email marketing, but I suck at clearing my own inbox. If you're listening or watching and there's something in here that's been useful, let me know. That would be great. You can get me at Amy Yoga Biz Coach is me on Insta. I love DMs, can't get enough. So there's that. And then my podcast, Abundant Yoga Teachers. It's good for, honestly, I use a lot of yoga analogies, but it's good for holistic practitioners or anybody who's solopreneuring in a way that they want to be in integrity with their values. Come hang out with us. We're a cool crowd. Well, in a nerdy kind of way.
I'm sure it's not nerdy at all.
It's really nerdy. I'm okay with that.
I mean, you'd have to define a nerd, which is hard to do these days.
I love nerds. We're all nerds.
I had a assistant who had a t-shirt made for me with the hashtag yoga nerd. So I think actually I'm okay with it as a label.
I like it.
Amazing. All right. Well, the last question we always ask every one of our guests is, if you had to leave our listeners who are just starting out, just getting into this industry, with one last wisdom bomb, what would it be? It would be, stop following everyone else who does anything like you do. You've got to block it all out, because the comparisonitis will take you down. So stop following everybody else who does what you do, and just do you. Get a mentor so you're on track, but you've got to stay really focused. Do you your way and unfollow until you have the resilience to watch other people objectively. Unfollow everybody else. Stop looking at your competitors and just stay focused on the next step. Love it. There you have
Love
it. Thank
that.
you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on, Amy. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you. We're going to, keep watching you, and hopefully you can come back and share some more value with us in the future. But it's been such a pleasure having you, and we'll make sure to, drop in the show notes where people can find you. And let's stay connected.
Thanks, ladies. Super fun.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Course Creation Podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being a champion of ours. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe and find us on Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. We really want to hear from you, and we're going to be digging through reviews for our next guest to feature. So if you're interested in being a guest, then you know what to do. Also, join our private Facebook community called the Course Creation Crew to connect with other course creators. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at coursecreation.com. That is all. We appreciate you all so much and look forward to having you here next time.